All right, hello YouTube. I know this is a little I know I'm like a half hour late. I apologize. I was having an issue with my camera. Um but I managed to resolve it obviously because I'm here. So yeah, so here we go. Part 2 of the worst comic book movies of all time. I just got to find my here it is. My piece of paper. Um we're gonna do this how we normally do. These aren't in any particular order or anything like that. These are just my picks, and this is gonna be a tough one because there is a lot of just bad movies on here. Um, I would normally I would be doing this with a beer right now, but considering I haven't had breakfast yet, that would be kind of weird. But anyway, um, yeah. So here we go. Number one, Captain Marvel. Oh my God. Um, the interesting thing about this movie is I knew it was going to be. I knew it was going to be shit. Um, I remember when. I remember when. Like when they were first promoting it. Uh, you know, uh, like I remember, when they were first showing, the trailer in theaters, and I was not at all impressed with the trailer. I thought it looked very, very cheesy. I thought it looked, um, I thought it looked very, very underwhelming and just very, very, um, it looked like a Green Lantern ripoff, is basically what it looked like to me. Um, she she was I only saw the movie once. I hated it so much. And literally the only reason why I saw it was because Kevin Feige apparently said it was Avengers Endgame essential. Um Last time I will ever take Kevin Feige's word for anything because you very easily could have watched Avengers Endgame and not have seen Captain Marvel because she's literally like barely in the movie. However, obviously, did not know that at the time, obviously, because Endgame had not come out yet. Um, and yeah, no, this movie, what really, really killed this movie for me, two things actually. Um, I can't stand Brie Larson. Um, I think I do not like her acting. Um, I did not care at all for her performance as Captain Marvel. Um, and I thought it was just a very bland performance on her part. And I know that's kind of what they were going for, but um, but because they did that, I really had no reason to care about her as a character. I found her very, very just unlikable. I found her very uh just like sarcastic at times and just very um just very kind of, I mean, I don't want to necessarily say bitchy, but I mean, just very, you know, kind of like, but just very, uh, just, like snarky at times and sarcastic and, um, very like standoffish and just very, kind of very much like, like Brie Larson herself. Like she was very, she basically played herself in this movie. Um, And yeah, no, yeah, no, this movie just absolutely this movie was just dog shit as far as I'm concerned. And the other thing that really, really killed it for me was the special effects. The CGI was fucking atrocious um, in the movie. It just, like it had a very 90s, um, like feel to it, like Blade, like take the first Blade, like that came out in 98. Uh, that came out in 98, and the original Blade, which is actually one of my favorite movies, um, because it was made in the 90s, the original Blade has a very much it's very much, because it was made in the 90s, like the uh the the very you know um the very style of the movie, and the very, like look of the movie, and the special effects, and just, the way that that movie was made, because it was made in the 90s, it's very much, like in your face, like no apologies, uh 90s, and that was, and that was fine. And that was, that's one of the things that makes, that's one of the things that makes, the original Blade, so much fun when you go back, to watch it today. um it was just it works, because that movie was made in the 90s, it works, for something like Blade. With, with Captain Marvel, it does not. And, with today's technology, and with today's, uh, just, with all the technology and stuff that they have today, when you make a movie, when you make a movie today that looks like it was something, when you make a movie today that looks like, something that should have been made, X amount of years ago, or that could have come out, X amount of years ago. It's embarrassing, and um, it's embarrassing, and it just, it doesn't work. And it feels very, it feels, it just, like very lacking, and very, um, just very lacking, and very stale, and just very, um, and just, I mean, I was watching, like I remember when I saw this in the theater, and I remember when I saw it in the theater, and I was like, oh my God, I am so bored. I mean, seriously, like it was boring, and it was bland, and it was the best thing about it. I will say though, was Jude Law um, the main villain. Um, but yeah, and then you have, obviously a de-aged, Samuel L. Jackson um, in the movie, and it's just, yeah, it felt just, it 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 you know and and then you get, like the origin of how, Coulson and Nick Fury met. It's like, who cares? It's like, I don't care how they met. I don't care how, and the biggest thing that pissed me off though was how Nick Fury ends up losing his eye um in the movie. That was absolutely retarded. That was just I that was I the less said about that, the better. But yeah, no, this movie is definitely deserves to be on the list of worst comic book movies ever made, because it was dog shit. All right, moving on. Oh, been speaking of dog shit, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. Oh, um, yeah. I honestly, I don't even know where to start with this one. this came out under the um this came out under the same, under the same brand as Punisher Warzone, and that being the Marvel Knights, you know, label, the more adult, um, the more adult, take on, Marvel. And this movie, I mean, I really, really enjoyed the first Ghost Rider movie for what it was. It's obviously, it's not a perfect movie, obviously. Um, Nicolas Cage definitely would not have been my first choice for Ghost Rider, but you know, but um, you know, but I feel like the first movie did the first movie, it stays very, very true uh to the source material. Uh some fans out there will say, it stayed true to the source material to an extent, but they're wrong. The first Ghost Rider movie was very, very true to uh the comics. Um this movie The second movie is this was made by the same guys who did the Crank movies, Brian Taylor and I don't remember the other guy's name off the top of my head, but it was made by the guys who did both of the Crank movies. Um, and from what I understand, a lot went wrong with this movie. I think from what I remember hearing, it had like multiple rewrites. It had just script problem after script problem. Um, and from what I understand, the directors were not happy at all with the way the movie turned out. Um, the plot for this movie is almost non-existent. There basically is no plot. Nothing is explained in this movie. Um, it really feels like a fan film in a lot of areas. I mean, this movie has like an 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. And the movie was completely slammed by both critics and audiences. Um, and the CGI was awful. Um, the CGI was absolutely atrocious. I don't know what kind of special effects they used, but they were awful. Everything about this movie was awful. The acting, the writing, the direction, the overall look of the movie. You could tell that they were obviously aiming for a um, darker tone. The first Ghost Rider movie, in terms of tone, it felt a lot more. It was a lot more in line with the Daredevil movie because both Daredevil and Ghost Rider were directed by the same guy, Mark Steven Johnson, um, and you could tell that this Ghost Rider movie had they were aiming for, a darker tone and a darker story, and which I'll give it credit. I mean, in theory that's a great idea, but in execution it obviously completely fell flat in the execution because the movie because the movie um just everything about the movie sucked. And and even Idris Elba's character, who is usually a great actor, and in other things, he's usually very, very good. Um, in a lot of movies, he couldn't even save this movie. I nothing about this. Nothing about this movie. Um, Nothing about this movie was good, and it's pretty obvious why another Ghost Rider movie, wasn't made after that, is because this one was just so bad. I did hear a rumor that Marvel Studios might actually be doing something with Ghost Rider right now. It's just a rumor. I have nothing to back it up right now, unfortunately. Um, but I have heard that for some time they have been considering doing something with Ghost Rider. So yeah. So anyway, moving on. Oh boy, X-Men: The Last Stand. Um, this movie this movie sucked, but it did have some good things about it. Kelsey Grammer as Beast was probably the best thing about it. He That had been the first time that the Beast had been brought into live action. Um, and Kelsey Grammer did an absolutely phenomenal job. Um, playing Beast. He was easily the best part of the movie. Um, Colossus, who made a small appearance in X-Men 2, is back for X-Men 3. And it was definitely good to see him again. And have him, because he only played a small part in X-Men 2, and in the third movie he gets to do a lot more. So it was definitely great to see him again in the movie. But this movie this movie was just oh, and another thing, the Angel, um who also makes his live action debut in X-Men 3, and he was also phenomenal. Um that scene in the movie for the first time, when he spreads his wings for the first time, that was incredible. That was wicked cool. Um but the plot like the overall story and the overall plot literally had absolutely nothing to do with the original Dark Phoenix saga, by Chris Claremont and John Byrne. It had literally nothing to do with the comic book. Um, and you had and the movie was just, it was such a mess. I mean, you literally had everything from, like X-Men being killed off to X-Men losing their powers to uh, um you had you literally had, like Cyclops get killed off, like literally like right at the beginning of the movie when we first see, Jean Grey come back, and she kills Cyclops. Um and the whole movie was just a massive shit show. I mean, it had way too many characters. And that's one of the things that I can't stand about comic book movies, is when they just literally shove in as much shit as they possibly can, just because they can. Um, and it's like I said before in my it's like I said before in part one of this video, bigger doesn't necessarily mean better. Um, and and you could really, really tell that this movie was just all about just, shoving in, as much crap as they possibly can, and seeing, whether or not it would work in a movie like this. Um, and obviously, when you don't know what you're doing, in that type of situation, when it's not handled well, it can obviously blow up in your face. And that's exactly what happened here. Um, and that's exactly what happened here. And yeah, it was uh, and one of the things that pissed me off so much about this movie is Brian Singer, from what I understand, was originally supposed to do all three X-Men movies. Originally, he had a contract with Fox um, to do all three movies, but Fox, for whatever reason, wouldn't renew his contract to do all three movies. So instead, he went off to do Superman Returns. Um, and then they brought in Brett Radner to do the movie, which um but yeah, no, everything about the mostly everything about this movie sucked, other than, things like Beast, other than things like Beast, Angel, seeing Colossus come back. The Juggernaut also was fucking atrocious. I mean, I saw him, um, um, seeing him come back for Deadpool and Wolverine. That had been the first time in a very long time that I saw that version of Juggernaut. And when I saw him in Deadpool and Wolverine, and when I saw him in Deadpool and Wolverine, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot how much this guy sucked. Um, but yeah, yeah, no, X Men 3 is just, is dog shit. And obviously, Brian Singer's interpretation of X-Men 3 would have been massively different than what we ended up getting. And yeah, no, that movie, yeah, no, that movie can kiss my ass. Um, oh God, here we go. Okay. Number 4 on the list, Catwoman. Oh boy. This movie, why did this movie get made? Why? I mean, you know, this was back when DC and Warner Brothers were really, 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 really struggling. I mean, I mean, they're always struggling, but even, I mean, now they're on the verge of bankruptcy, Warner Brothers. But this was back when, this movie was obviously made back, you know, way before the DCEU. Um, and this was obviously long before we got, movies like Catwoman. I'm all right. This was obviously long before, we got movies like Aquaman, like Shazam, like Wonder Woman. Um, I will never understand why this Catwoman movie got made. Um, the only thing I'll give this movie is Halle Berry obviously looked hot as hell in the Catwoman costume. Um, and but they didn't, you know, a Catwoman movie in theory, I think is actually, I actually think, in theory would be a great idea. Um, there are lots of good, solo stories out there on Catwoman, from the comics that you could, um, that you could turn into a movie, and that would, and that would make, a very, very solid movie. Catwoman, her sister's keeper, I think would make, an incredible movie. Um, but yeah, no, this movie doesn't even it doesn't even stay true to, you know, the Catwoman to, this movie doesn't even stay true um, to the, mythology of, of the character, um, or, y anything like that. It's just, this is you could really, really tell that this was just something they pulled out of their asses, and they just, and they went with it. Um, Absolutely, literally nothing to do with the character, nothing to do with the comic books. Um, I just, bad, bad, bad writing, bad, 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 bad direction. Um, and so much so to the point where this movie won like all sorts of Razzies. And is literally considered one of the worst movies of all time, to which I you know, to which I obviously just completely agree. Um, yeah, no, this movie, I, yeah, which brings me to my final, to my final, and very well could be the worst movie on this list. Um, I would put it right up there with Catwoman, actually. Green Lantern. This movie This movie had so much wrong with it, and from what I understand, um, from what I understand, this is, surprise, surprise, this is another movie that Warner Brothers ended up ruining. Um, the only things that I'll give it is Mark Strong's, performance as Sinestro was easily the best part of the movie. He was incredible as Sinestro. Um, Ryan Reynolds, Ryan Reynolds, I thought made a pretty good Hal Jordan. I think he could have been a hell of a lot better. I think he could have been a hell of a lot better if he I think he could have been a hell of a lot better if the script, if the script was better, if there was a better script. And originally, from what I understand, um, Mark Guggenheim and Greg Berlanti, who, if you're not familiar with them, um, they were two of the biggest creators for Arrow. For the Green Arrow TV show on the CW. They were originally they were um, the main from what I hear, they were originally going to do the movie. I think they were originally the writers for the movie. Um, and then I don't remember all the details, behind, like what happened, and specifically, like what went wrong, um, but uh, but from what I understand, they ended up because I actually remember hearing that Greg Berlanti, the movie that we ended up getting, um, Greg Berlanti had no involvement in at all whatsoever. So so that alone should tell you something right there. Um, and it definitely and it definitely makes sense because this is nowhere near, the quality of Arrow. Um, this has nowhere near the quality that it would if Greg Berlanti had still been involved. Um, Um, the CGI suits were, one of the worst parts of the movie, in my opinion. The CGI suits were so fucking ridiculous. Anybody who has ever watched, you know, anybody, who has ever watched, like the Justice League cartoons, or whether it's, like the animated series or the animated movies or the Green Lantern animated movies, or even or read, like any of the comics, or seen pictures, or or anything like that, that that the Green Lantern suits are not CGI. They're just regular, costumes, that come on, obviously, like when they put the ring on. Um, and it, I, this, if I had to pick a movie, if I had to pick a movie, if I had to pick a comic book movie, that had the worst CGI, I would definitely say Green Lantern, like right offhand. It looks so incredibly fake. It looks so incredibly bad. Um, Parallax, especially, who looks absolutely retarded in this movie. Um, if you are familiar with the Green Lantern, mythology, you know that Hal Jordan became Parallax at one point in the comic books, and you know that Parallax uh, looked nothing like his comic book counterpart, um, in this movie. Um, Another thing that they ruined is Hector Hammond, who in the comic book, who in Green Lantern Secret Origin by Jeff Johns, he is a, like, very much, like a power hungry, um, always yelling at everybody, uh, always yelling at everybody, type of guy. And then in this movie, they make him into like this fucking like geeky, shy, like, oh, no one gives a shit about me type of guy. And that's not, and that's not, Hector Hammond. Um, and yeah, and just absolutely just ridiculous. Just absolutely fucking ridiculous writing. Um, and you could tell that Green Lantern, while on the topic of Green Lantern Secret Origin, you could tell that that was like their main source of inspiration for the movie. And I think it's pretty safe to say that Green Lantern. I think it's pretty safe to say that Mark Guggenheim's and Greg Berlanti's, original plan for the movie was, was to get it, as close to that story as possible. Again, um, and as someone, as somebody who was actually lucky enough to meet Mark Guggenheim, he was not happy at all with how that movie turned out. Um, he was not happy at all with how that movie turned out. He was very, very disappointed with how that movie turned out, and he literally said to me, he's like, "Yeah, what." The version of the movie that Mark and I originally had, um, but originally had, was nothing like what we ended up getting. Um, and he actually apologized to one fan, when I went to see him, for how the movie turned out. Um, for how the movie turned out, because obviously, when they left the movie, they obviously had no involvement after that. Um, but yeah, no, much like, a lot of the other movies that I had on this list, just, critically and commercially panned. Um, obviously, a obviously, a rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes. And the money that they lost on this movie, I don't remember how much money they lost on this movie off the top of my head, but I know it was a lot. They lost a lot of money on this movie. Um, they lost a lot of money on this movie. Um, and given, obviously how bad the movie was, I'm not at all surprised. Um, because this movie was just so fucking atrocious, and like at the time it was really DC's big chance. You know, it was DC's chance, to get on top. But obviously, DC and Warner Brothers, obviously, DC and Warner Brothers just completely just, fucking blew it. Surprise, surprise. Um, and yeah, no, it just undoubtedly one of the worst movies. Uh, you know, undoubtedly one of the worst movies ever made. Never mind comic book movie, but just never mind comic book movies, but just one of the worst movies ever made in general. Um, but anyway, yeah. So those are my picks for part two. Let me know what you guys think. Do you agree? Um, I'm still debating whether or not I'm going to do a part three. I might do a part three, depending on how many I can come up with. Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure. But I will definitely, I will let you guys know. Like, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace.